Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. We've just arrived at Canmore after a beautiful drive this morning. Plan for today is to drive the car in the mountains, get a feel for it, give you my first impressions. But first of all, let me show you some of the beautiful scenery we saw driving in. So let's jump right into the specs. 4.2 litre twin turbo V8, 621 horsepower, 627 pound-feet of torque. 0 to 100 times, we should expect something in the region of 3.4, but I'm pretty sure we'll see some 3.2 second times when we're testing on a good surface, when we have the summer tires back on, and also when the engine is running. So you'll probably have to wait until the springtime until I can show you those. The new turbos on this model now make 2.6 bar instead of 2.4. That is largely what's driving the increase in horsepower for the performance model over the standard model. We have an 8-speed torque converter transmission, sport quattro rear differential, and on this car we have the dynamic ride control suspension spec, and that deletes the standard air suspension, adds dynamic springs which reduce body roll and give the car a more planted ride. Onto the exterior. I am a huge fan of this styling. Big body panels, huge road presence, and then on the performance model, the 22-inch lightweight wheels. What you're looking at here are our 21-inch winter set. I'll flash up a picture of the car when it's in its 22-inch summer running gear. But overall, just a fantastic looking car. The Ascari Blue was a special color for the RS6 Performance. We're super happy with it. I think you can see it in the light where you've got lots of different shades of blue depending on how the light's hitting it. In the shade, it looks like a very dark blue. And then in the sun here, as we get close, you can see it really lightens up. So fantastic color, really pleased with it. Looks a lot better on the car than it does on the configurator online. Okay, so let's chat through the interior design. Despite being 3 years since this model first came to North America, the interior is very modern with that high-end feel that you'd expect from a top-of-the-range Audi. The blue design package that we had added to our model really works well with the Ascari Blue paint on the exterior. The addition of the blue seat belts, the blue stitching in the seats as well as in the steering wheel, and that blue carbon fiber weave on the dash and in the doors really does a great job of setting the car apart from the standard RS6 model. The addition of Alcantara on the steering wheel, center console, and in the doors really adds to that sporty feel. And something I love at nighttime is the assortment of options around interior lighting, and something that the kids are a huge fan of are the seatbelt buckles that light up. Fantastic addition, something that I wasn't aware of, but is really useful when driving at night. As you would expect for a car of this size, seating space in the back is plentiful, lots of rear legroom for 2 adults, or in our case 2 kids and child seats, so no issues there. The same with the trunk or the boot if you're from the UK, masses of space, and then if you put down the rear seats, it almost doubles the amount of space that you can get in. So great for transporting the kids, the pets, the luggage, the skis, just a fantastic all-round wagon. It's not all good news in here though. The one disappointment for me is the seats. These are the standard seats that you got from 2021 in RS6s and beyond. And my frustration with them is they're not particularly sporty, they don't particularly grab you, so they just don't give you as exciting a driving position as you might want in a car like this. They're perfectly comfortable, you know, they're great for long journeys, and granted, that is a lot of what this car is about. But when I saw the RS4 competition in Europe get the carbon bucket seats, I really hoped for the RS6 performance variant they would bring them here as well. But they haven't, and I think the lack of a massage function and the lack of a higher end seat in a car like this, for me, just a little bit disappointing. Okay, so let's chat about the infotainment. First of all, we're just looking at the seat screen. So you've got all your common functions here: heated seat, blown seat, air conditioning, heated steering wheel. You can set some of these as favorites, so you can bring through some of the options that are hidden in menu behind. All works really well. I have heard some complaints that people find it a little bit more difficult to use it when you've got a touchscreen rather than buttons. I can certainly sympathize with that, but the good thing here is the screen is nice and large, and for me, largely it's a set and forget. The only buttons I tend to be pressing on a regular basis would be the seat functions, whether you're putting on the blower in the summer or the heat in the winter, and then also the heated steering wheel there, and they're perfectly easy to access when you're driving. If you do want to grab some other functions, it's pretty easy. You just hit these three dots there, and then on the top screen you can see it brings up some more options. You know, if we clicked on the rear here, we'll be able to change how the climate control is working in the back. And something that I really enjoy actually about RS6, and it's probably in a few other models, is the fragrance. You can set that to winter or summer, and then you can adjust the fragrance level, and my assumption is when that runs out, when you take the car in for service, that will be refilled. But that really is a nice touch actually. It adds a nice kind of fragrance to the cabin. Onto the MMI. No complaints really with the system, solid feel. I like the haptic feedback, so you know whether you have clicked something on screen. I enjoy these programmable shortcut buttons on the left, and this is the first screen that you get presented with when you log in, and it's pretty good because it just comes up with a bunch of shortcuts or recently used items, so you can find what you need nice and easy. When I jump in the car, also the MMI system, if I'm in, knows that it's me, so it's easy to log me straight in. And then the same for my wife. If she gets in and I'm not in the car, super easy for her to select her own My Audi profile. A little bit more challenging if we both get in at the same time and we both have our phones with us. I think typically the MMI will just default to the last person that drove the car. To find the rest of the MMI settings, you just scroll to the right and then you'll be presented with the typical functions: radio, navigation, CarPlay, vehicle, etc. There's a couple more screens you can find, so you can customize the users for the car, go deeper into the settings, get the news, get the weather, all sorts of things you can do now the cars are connected to LTE. One functionality that I do enjoy is the ability for it to sync with your phone calendar, so I have that set as a shortcut, as you can see. This is great because if you store addresses in your calendar appointment, then the car is able to pick up those addresses and navigate to them for you. So super easy. Obviously something you can do within CarPlay as well, but if you prefer using the Audi navigation so you can get it in the heads-up display, this is a nice feature and saves having you to input the address directly into the MMI. Taking a look at the virtual cockpit, and this has always been an absolute favorite for me with Audis that I've had over the last couple of years. What you're looking at here actually is a special variation of the dials. So you have a white background, and that's just available to the North American iterations of the RS6 and RS7 Performance. So a lovely little feature. You've got basically a selection of 3 different dials. This is the one I have when I'm just driving on auto mode, so fairly relaxed. If I switch over here to RS1 mode, then we kind of get this runway view. Probably not my favorite in terms of rev counters, but I'm giving it a try, looking to get used to it, and with the white background it does look kind of neat. Sticking with the technology, one of the features I was quite keen to try out was the remote start. Now, I know many other manufacturers have had that technology in place for the last 3, 4, maybe even 5 years. But for us, this was a great addition. You know, this is going to be the car that runs to and from the mountains in the winter, and on a -20 day when you're getting off the slopes, knowing that the car is warmed up and ready to go is going to be a fantastic feature for us to use. So I'm going to go ahead and get that selected in the background, and let's see how it works. So there we go. That probably took about 10 to 15 seconds from when I hit the remote start on my phone. So that's not bad. Obviously, normally you'd be hitting it a lot earlier than that, especially for us as we're coming down the slopes. But good to know that it works. I'm assuming in areas of low coverage, it's going to be a challenge, but I'll report back more on that when we test it more actively over the winter. So let's talk through the driving experience, and we'll start off with the engine. Power delivery is very strong. The turbos give it a real punch when they spool up. Some very minor turbo lag if you're not in the ideal power band, but honestly nothing to write home about. It's not the highest revving V8, tops out at around 7,000 RPM, but it does have pull all the way through the rev range, plenty of torque low down, and once the engine is running, I'll come back and I'll share how it performs at the top end as well. We know Audi left some room in the engine, given it runs different tunes on other cars, such as in the Lamborghini Urus, and these V8 twin turbos from Audi do typically respond well to some aftermarket work. Just make sure you put the right fuel in. Looking at you, Matt Armstrong. It's an exciting engine, plenty of muscle, but with that refined edge that you always get with German automakers. Onto the gearbox. Having run dual clutch systems in both the S5 and the TTRS, I definitely miss the sharpness of those shifts. The RS6 has a torque converter and it does have a heavy feel. The 2021 model also felt kind of sluggish and honestly a little bit lifeless, but what I'm pleased to report is in this performance variant, the work that Audi have done, it's clear each shift is now punchier than before, much more of an event, and it's about as good as you're going to get from a torque converter. The driving modes have a noticeable impact on gear changes. Drive is subtle, but rewarding nonetheless. Sport is constantly tugging at the leash, which is awesome if you're out for a spirited drive in the mountains, but it's a little bit antisocial if you're just driving around the city. Shifting is much more of an event in this performance model, even in drive, but especially in sport mode. You get a big kick in your backside with the aggressive upshifts in sport, and I love it. The kick-down response and the downshifts are both on point, extremely lively in sport, as you would expect, with plenty of pops and bangs when coming off the throttle. ride on the RS6 will largely depend on whether you have the air suspension or the DRC dynamic ride control, which is on spring suspension. So we have the DRC in this model, but in the 2021 version that we ran for a little while, we had that on air. And here are the key differences. The air suspension is extremely comfortable, very smooth ride. The car used to put people to sleep in a heartbeat when we went on long journeys, which is great for the kids. But when you were driving a little bit more aggressively around corners, under sharp acceleration, sharp deceleration, I really felt the car pitched and rolled much more than I would have liked, even in the stiffest suspension mode when it's on air suspension. With the DRC, I've only driven it for about 500 kilometers, but I can tell you it's a much stiffer ride, not to the point where it's uncomfortable. You still have 3 different modes to select from, and you can notice the difference between the 3, but the body roll is vastly reduced, and it's just a more appropriate ride in my mind for a car with this amount of power and this amount of weight. Like the suspension, the steering has different modes that you can choose from. Each will give you a slightly different feel and level of sharpness as you're driving. Ever since we've had the car, I've kept it in dynamic mode. I prefer a much more direct feel from the steering, and it's pretty solid. No complaints really. It is still on the end of a 2-ton wagon, so you do notice that, and I probably need a little bit more time to test that just to give you a full verdict. One thing which is very noticeable though is the rear wheel steering that this RS6 comes equipped with. It makes parking and 3-point turns honestly even easier than our much smaller Q4. The rear wheels turn in the opposite direction to the front to give you a better turning circle, and then when you're at speed and cornering, the car is incredibly stable as the rear and front wheels work together and steer in the same direction. Onto the cabin noise. Audi made a big deal when they removed the sound insulation from this performance model, and the question everyone has is, did it work? In my mind, it absolutely did. The engine note is much more present. The exhaust note is a lot louder in the cabin as well. My main concern was whether this was then going to add to tire noise and road noise, but honestly, I really can't tell the difference, and the only mystery is why the sound insulation was included to begin with. We opted for the standard Bang & Olufsen sound system when we spec'd the car, and it's solid, if not spectacular, but if you're looking for a little bit extra, there is always the $5,000 upgraded B&O system that comes with a few more bells and whistles. As a daily driver, the RS6 is proving extremely easy to live with. If you're in auto or comfort mode, the RS6 is very relaxing, it's quite sedate, it's an easy car to live with every day despite the huge amount of power that's available to you. It's a little bit on the big side when you're in the city, but that rear wheel steering means 3-point turns are easier in this than many other smaller cars, and parking sensors on the wings mean you won't curb the wheels when parking. You don't even have to park. If you don't want to, you can jump out and watch the car park itself with its remote parking function on the My Audi app, which is pretty cool. Expect plenty of nods of approval from other drivers who know what the car is, and some long stares from folks that don't. The experience of the RS6 to date has been one of absolute joy. It is a car that constantly puts a smile on my face, even when I'm not driving it. The looks, the road presence, the sound, it really doesn't disappoint. From a driving perspective, it is a 2-ton race car, and that is as mad as it sounds. It's full of emotion, excitement, and it is a thrilling ride for the whole family. The sun is setting, so it's time for me to wrap up this video. My first impressions are, if you've got one of these on order, you will not be disappointed. It is an absolute riot behind the wheel, whether you're cruising on the highway, throwing it around some twisty roads in the mountains. It is just an absolute joy. Thanks so much for watching. Catch you in the next one.